Have you ever wondered what it's like to stand on the summit of Mount Everest, the top of the world? It's a question my wife Denise and I are often asked as we share our story with audiences. And it's a feeling that's difficult to describe with words. But I'll ask you to think back to a time in your life that you worked incredibly hard for an extended period, maybe even years, to achieve something great and reach your summit. Maybe it was walking across the stage to receive your college diploma, or perhaps as a parent watching with pride and joy your son or daughter do the same. Maybe it was taking those last few steps to cross the finish line in your first marathon, or hear your name announced and the sound of applause as you're recognized for a big win in your sport or professional arena. Take a moment with me now, if you will, and close your eyes. Close your eyes and put yourself back into that memorable situation. Feel again those same feelings of complete elation, satisfaction with your accomplishment, and ear-to-ear grinning with delight. And now remove 2/3 of the oxygen out of the air you're breathing, lower the temperature to 40 degrees below zero, and add a piercing cold wind blowing in your face. Now that's what it's like to stand on the summit of Mount Everest. And you still get to peer across the horizon and see that same majestic view as you would from the cruising altitude of a jetliner at over 29,000 feet. But you don't have to look through a tiny airplane window to see it. It's right there in front of you, and it's stunning glory. Being on top of the world, at least metaphorically speaking, is a feeling we can all experience in our own ways. Wouldn't you agree? I'm going to share with you how I got to the top of Mount Everest, the final summit in my quest to climb the highest mountains around the world, the 7 summits. And I got there with the simple $3 item that you can probably find in your own home. And I am convinced that if you use the tools I'm about to share with you, you will reach summits higher than you ever thought possible. Reaching those summits is going to require overcoming obstacles and dealing with uncertainty. And nowadays, we have a tremendous amount of uncertainty, don't we? I mean, there's economic uncertainty, political, fiscal uncertainty, and with all of this, it may feel like you're painstakingly climbing a steep, steep mountain, and you're climbing in a storm with whiteout conditions and limited or no visibility at all of what lies ahead. You're climbing without oxygen, it's bitterly cold, and meanwhile, deadly avalanches are coming crashing down on either side of you. So now, more than ever before, regardless of your job title or your industry, you're in the business of overcoming obstacles in order to survive. And overcoming obstacles in the face of uncertainty is precisely what we had to do to climb Mount Everest. And with all of this uncertainty, there are times that you may question yourself. You have doubts about where you're heading. Am I on the right trail? Or better yet, am I even climbing the right mountain? You can easily talk yourself out of doing things you really want to do in life, goals you may want to pursue, because it may seem like the obstacles are too great for you to conquer. It reminds me of a quote. After becoming the first person to successfully climb Mount Everest in 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary said, "It's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves." And it's interesting, isn't it, how many times we allow ourselves to get in the way of doing great things? How many times have you heard yourself say, "I'd really like to, but I don't have the time, but I don't have the money, but I've never done anything like this before, and I don't know if I could do it"? Well, I didn't know whether I could climb Mount Everest, the highest mountain on earth, until I took my first step and tried. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to convince anyone here to go climb Mount Everest. But I am trying to convince you, as Hillary said, to conquer yourselves and pursue your really big goals and dreams, whatever they may be. For me, my goal was to climb the 7 summits. But I had, in my mind, a seemingly insurmountable obstacle. And we all have our own obstacles, don't we? Whether they're physical or psychological, visible or not. Mine just happens to be a bit more visible. You see, I was born with something known as brachial plexus palsy, which is a birth injury that left me with one arm that's smaller and much less functional than the other. During birth, the set of nerves known as the brachial plexus connecting my right arm to my spine was torn, resulting in partial paralysis. Growing up, I couldn't tie my shoes, button a shirt, or shift gears in a car with my right hand. Out of necessity, I had to be creative in order to come up with solutions how to do these things. And when it came to climbing and getting up more technically challenging sections that required the use of two hands, I thought the obstacle might be too big for me. I just don't have the gripping strength in my right hand. And as much as I tried and wanted to do this, I tried and I failed. And I failed again. But I wanted to climb nonetheless. And then a solution appeared. This is a simple $3 coat hook that you might find on the back of your closet or bathroom door. And this is a photo of Aron Ralston. Aron Ralston you may recognize as the guy who cut off his own arm to save his life after being pinned by a boulder while climbing alone in Utah. Aron's book later became the movie 127 Hours, starring James Franco. And Aron's prosthetic arm, customized into this ice axe, is what sparked my creativity. I figured if I could just find something to help me hold on to those rock ledges, I could overcome the biggest obstacle in my path to getting to the top of the 7 summits. So, along with a simple wrist brace and this hook and a few power tools in my garage, I created the claw. And eventually, it took me to the top of the world. So what's your hook? What's your ticket to the top of the world? Allow your creativity to flow. The solution to your challenges may be a lot closer than you think. So, in addition to creativity, another magical ingredient to getting to the top is teamwork. By no means did I get to the top of Mount Everest by myself. I had a great team, and particularly a great climbing partner, my wife, Denise. Speaking of which, I just have to share this one brief story about the two of us up on Mount McKinley in Alaska. Otherwise known as Denali, this is a particularly dangerous and deadly mountain because of the crevasses. And these cracks or fissures in the snow can be several hundred feet deep. So for that reason, we travel roped together. I was leading our rope team of 4. Denise was tied in on the rope directly behind me. And I took a step, and all of a sudden, wham! I fell right into a crevasse. Fortunately, Denise had her ice axe out, and she secured the line. I was able to kick my crampons in, get to the edge to safety, and everything was fine. The interesting part of the story, however, is later that day, we were back in our tent talking about the situation, and I looked at Denise, and I told her how much I love her and how much she means to me. And then Denise looked at me and told me how helpless and frustrated she felt, watching me as I clung for my life to the edge of this crevasse. And then she looked at me and confided that the reason she felt so helpless and frustrated is because she wanted to take a picture of me in my pathetic state, but I had the camera in my pocket.
So in my defense, by a show of hands, who thinks that would have been a good photo? All right, thank you for the support. It sure takes tying the knot to a pretty extreme level too, doesn't it? I mean, I am tied to my husband on a climbing rope on the highest mountain in North America. Well, that incident and so many other situations that we've been in confirm the importance of teamwork and selecting the right partner. Selecting the right partner in marriage can mean the difference between blissful contentment or despair. The right choice of a business partner can mean the difference between financial success or ruin. And the right choice of a climbing partner can mean the difference between life or death. Paul and I always looked at reaching the summit was fantastic, but we realized it was only halfway, with the most important part still ahead of us. There's a great quote by a world-renowned mountaineer named Ed Viesturs, and Ed says, "Getting to the top is optional, but getting down is mandatory." And those were words that we live by. Well, Ed was on Everest back in '96 when the mountain recorded its worst disaster in history. The story was recounted by Jon Krakauer in his best-selling novel, Into Thin Air. For those of you who read the book or saw the movie, you recall there was probably 15 people who died on the mountain that year. And most of them were climbing with Rob Hall or Scott Fisher's groups. They really didn't know one another. They had not climbed together as a team before. And in most cases, they met each other in Kathmandu just prior to the expedition beginning. So this wasn't a team by any means, but merely a group of individuals who were climbing the same mountain together. And unfortunately, we know how their tragic story ended. So Paul and I took a really different approach to climbing Everest, and we formed our own team with 3 other friends of ours that we'd had some experience climbing on some of the other 7 summits expeditions. We knew our partner's strengths, weaknesses, and values, and they knew ours. So realizing the magnitude of this endeavor and the obstacle we were attempting to overcome in climbing Mount Everest, we also formed a support team that consisted of 23 of our friends, and we called it the Everybody to Everest Challenge. These good friends of ours took 3 weeks off of work, they traveled halfway around the world to Nepal, and they hiked to Everest Base Camp at over 17,000 feet to see us off before we went for the top. We had organized all the details for their trip. We held multiple training hikes to our local mountains. Most importantly, though, we launched a major fundraising campaign for the Challenge Athletes Foundation. The Challenge Athletes Foundation is an organization that provides grants for prosthetic limbs and specialized sports equipment that goes to kids, American soldiers wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as others with various disabilities or missing limbs. And believe me, these high-tech wheelchairs and prosthetics are far more sophisticated and expensive than Paul's $3 coat hook, but the transformational breakthroughs of the equipment are the same. So it is truly an amazing cause and one that affects lives in a very profound way. And since '97, CAF has raised over $40 million and assisted nearly 8,000 individuals to get off of the sidelines and back into the game of life. We raised over $114,000 for Challenge Athletes Foundation as part of our Everybody to Everest Challenge. And climbing for something bigger than us and bigger than Everest itself was beyond gratifying. And after spending 2 months climbing this mountain, once we finally reached the summit, in more ways than one, we were absolutely on top of the world. So in addition to creativity and teamwork, Paul has a final element necessary for you to stand on top of the world.
While traveling the globe and climbing the 7 summits, we learned some valuable lessons that can be applied in our lives, in our marriage, to business, our careers, and to my career as an investment banker. I do actually have a day job, by the way. But the one lesson that I really want to share with you is move fast. There's some other great ones as well in my book, Steps to the Summit. Lessons, or steps as we call them, such as live courageously, make a decision, never give up. But step number 9 is one that I think each and every one of you can immediately apply in your own lives to reach your summit, whatever that may be. And I think the best way to convey this message is to read a brief passage from my book. So, if I may, it's story time. Now, I don't know if story time is entirely appropriate for a bunch of adults attending a TED Talk, but here we go. Now, the subtitle of this chapter is Caution in the Kubu Icefall. With each passing hour, the sun crept its way above the giant Himalayan peaks, its rays warming our shoulders and thawing our bodies from the chill of the pre-dawn hours. While this was a welcome feeling on our bodies, we knew the warmth of the sun would also cause the ice to melt and create dangerous instability. Seracs, or blocks of ice, range in size from small cars to 10-story office buildings. They can and do topple without notice, crushing climbers like a soda can under the force of a heavy boot. Simultaneously, as the minute hand sweeps around the clock during the daylight hours, the snowpack high above the icefall on Everest's west shoulder becomes more susceptible to avalanches. There is now an additional danger of becoming buried by literally tens of thousands of pounds of snow and ice that could come crashing down while climbers below are navigating their way through the labyrinth of seracs, crevasses, and ladders. We were well aware of this ever-present danger of avalanches and the amount of time it took to make our way through this veritable death chamber. And then, in the pre-dawn hours, it happened. Exactly what we had feared. A thunderous noise erupted on the slopes above. It was an avalanche. An enormous volume of snow began roaring down the slopes toward us. We all halted in our tracks, but my brain was frantically running. Within milliseconds, it was processing the information from this potentially catastrophic scene in order to instruct my body how to react. And I'm going to stop reading right there. You have to get a copy of the book to find out if we survived. Now, at the end of the chapter, the lesson or step, move fast, goes like this. Imagine being in the Kubu Icefall. If you knew the chances of being crushed by a falling serac or avalanche increased with each passing moment, you would certainly hurry to get through there as fast as you could. In that situation, you wouldn't procrastinate or become distracted by anything that would impede your progress toward your goal. Create that same urgency and move rapidly to accomplish your priority objectives and those key tasks or steps that will lead you to your summit of success. Start early in the morning while the less ambitious are still in bed and move swiftly. Just as with the Kubu Icefall, each moment that passes increases the chances that your important goals in business and life may collapse and come crashing down, shattering into pieces. You know, a long time ago, I heard somebody say that the true definition of success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or purpose. It's not necessarily the big house, the career, or reaching the proverbial top, as so many of us seem to believe. Instead, success is a journey. It's a climb towards that meaningful goal. And you've got to make progress, take steps up towards that goal each and every day. In order to help remember this, I came up with an acronym for the word summit. Success ultimately means making an impact today. We truly, truly hope that all of you will move fast to make an impact in your own lives by committing to your important goals and dreams, and along the way, positively impacting the lives of all of those that you come into contact with. And we hope that you take your next step towards this objective today. And remember, rely on your climbing team and your partners for support. You don't have to climb this mountain alone. And the next time you're presented with a seemingly insurmountable obstacle standing in the path to your summit, look for your own ticket. It may very well be staring you in the face on the back of your closet or bathroom door. And if you think any of these ideas would positively impact others, by all means, please share this message with your friends. Thank you so much for having us at this illuminating TED Talk, and all the best in your climb to the top of the world.